Well, we're seeing the EV revolution develop at breakneck speed. And if you enjoy hearing about emerging trends and technology relating to electric mobility, then you've come to the right place. In this episode, you'll hear about some of the key related innovations and trends that will be showcased at Electric Autonomy Canada's annual EV and Charging Expo. Toronto's exhibition place plays host to Canada's largest electrification event for business professionals seeking to add electric vehicles and charging infrastructure to their fleets and facilities. Each year, a growing number of exhibitors attend this show to display technology that supports our transition to electrification in Canada. Discover how these innovations help businesses and vehicle owners embrace electrification, unlocking the benefits of reduced costs, improved performance, while at the same time contributing to a more sustainable environment. Joining us is Electric Autonomy's Vice President of Strategic Development, Clean Transportation, Ilana Weitzman. Ilana will take us through some of the technology and trends that will be on display at the show, and will introduce one of the Expo's exhibitors, Michael Hibori of Schneider Electric, who in turn will share a little bit about his company's work in megawatt charging for commercial vehicles. All right, Ilana, welcome to the panel and to the webinar.
Thanks, Tim, for having me and Michael here tonight. And I promise you right off the bat that there are no April Fool's ideas planted in here. Everything we're going to talk about tonight is real.
Uh,
Um,
I think if you would do an April Fool's joke afternoon, it's supposed to bounce back at you or something like that.
I think that's a really good way to think about it. So,
All right.
yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to get out of the way. Welcome again, and I'll just let you have at it.
I think I came in thinking about fleet and electrification, and what I found as an individual who's part of both facilities and sustainability and sourcing, there's really so many other dimensions to this conference.
This event lets us connect with our entire ecosystem. We've got our customers here, utilities, suppliers here. This is great, not only from a business development perspective, but also an ecosystem participation perspective.
Sustainability means different things to different organizations, and you can't do it in isolation. And so I think events like this are great because there's really something for all those different verticals within your organization. And you can think about how you pass the baton to one another to really drive sustainable change.
So, first, I'd love to just give everyone a big picture of what we're trying to accomplish with the EV and Charging Expo. It's an annual gathering for business and government professionals that saw over 2,000 registered delegates last year. We're really focused on driving adoption, and you will see folks on stage and in the audience from companies like IKEA, Tim Hortons, Metro Grocer, Purolator, the City of Vancouver, representing over 800 public and private organizations. As we know, sort of every little bit counts when we are talking about electric vehicles. And while adoption rates are really moving along in terms of personal car adoption, when we think about fleets and some of these big organizations, it's much slower. So fleet electrification is around 5% in this country. So we really have a long way to go. And that's what that is what we're trying to accomplish. My primary role at the Expo is putting together the programming, which is incredibly rewarding and just plain interesting. That comes together from hours and hours of conversations with folks like Michael, who's joining us here tonight, and all of the leading companies and stakeholders in the space. And what's fun about that is it really gives Electric Autonomy and the EV and Charging Expo audience an insider's view of all the developments that these organizations are working on, and that they're really generously coming on stage to share. So what we'll do tonight is just go through some of the big trends and innovations we are seeing at this year's Expo, which is taking place on May 14th and 15th at the Enercare Center. I hope some of you will be able to join us for that. So, diving right in, when we think about fueling, we think about traditional fuel retailers, but the real fast charging opportunity is going to be for sort of a whole new field of players, whether that's automakers or utilities. And we have an analyst, Ash Wang from Bloomberg BNEF, who is going to join us on stage. And she's going to share sort of a global data set around who the real market leaders are in terms of EV charging rollout. And while you'll see some big names like Shell, there's also a huge opportunity that is only just beginning in Canada for retailers like grocery stores. So you see a picture here of charging at Tesco. There are supermarkets in France like Leclerc and Lidi, and Lidi has well north of 7,500 charging connectors at their locations. Tesco, Walmart, Costco are also developing this market. And we'll have a great session with On the Run EV Fast Charge, Metro Grocery, as I said, Bloomberg BNEF, and the Retail of Canada Council of Canada to really look at this kind of interesting way to get charging into our urban centers at great locations that are kind of adjacent to travel corridors, especially for commuters, that go beyond the sort of traditional gas station of the past. The next piece is, I'm sure some of you have heard, one of the ways that fleets and charge point operators can install charging infrastructure and provide this service either to their fleet or to the public while EV adoption and utilization is just growing is through the carbon credit market. And so some of you may heard about the clean fuel standards and how compliance carbon credits can be earned sort of off every kilowatt hour that's delivered into a fleet. And that revenue can be used to expand charging programs or act as a revenue stream for fleets to offset their total cost of ownership. So it's a really great system. But there's a whole new market that's evolving around voluntary carbon credits, which is, I think, really creative and really interesting. Some of you may have heard about the book and claim system that is being used for sustainable aviation. And this idea is kind of being adapted for moving freight. So I'll give you an example. If a carrier has a load moving on an electrified truck and no one has claimed the GHG emissions reductions for their corporation from that leg of the journey, the carrier can actually sell that leg to a buyer like a shipper like Microsoft that's trying to reduce their GHG emissions and sort of have that tabulate. And I find that really interesting because even if your physical goods aren't on that truck, if you've sort of bought that lane, that electrified lane, it can be kind of a great way, again, for these carriers to monetize what's right now a very expensive project of moving electrified freight. And there's a company that will be coming to the show called 3 Degrees that will be presenting both on the more conventional compliance credits, but also on some of these what I call innovations in creating great revenue streams for carriers. I'm sure lots of you have opinions on this. What makes an EV charging site sticky? And we have quite a few software management companies coming to the show. So that's kind of the brain that sits on top of the hardware. Those companies include companies called Ampco, Drives, and Monta. They come from all over the world. And there's now enough data coming off these chargers for them to see patterns in usage. And as we know, the holy grail for a charge point operator is utilization. The more kilowatt hours they're delivering to vehicles, the better that infrastructure and more efficiently it's being used, the more, the more profitable a site will be. And so what Monta has done is they've looked at millions of charging sessions across 5,000 charge points in their European network and have identified 12 key factors that increase site utilization and make that site sort of the first choice for EV drivers. And I don't think any of you will be surprised to know that price is not the top reason. There are much more salient reasons for EV drivers. And I think that's going to be surprising maybe for some of the sort of new charge point operators in our audience, but we really want to educate them on what are the things that are really meaningful to EV drivers that might be counterintuitive. And some of the sites they've looked at are delivering upwards of 250 kilowatt hours per port per day. And in some parts of Norway, that rises up to 500 kilowatt hours per port per day, which is a really heavily utilized site. I think we'll all be happy to know as well that big cities are getting serious about medium and heavy duty trucks. I had a great conversation with Angelo Clarick, who is the sustainability program manager at the City of Toronto, and he calls light duty fleet electrification a snack, which to me is really encouraging that like the most experienced fleet managers see passenger vehicles as a no-brainer. And we're now seeing cities from Vancouver to Ottawa that are now looking to electrify much bigger vehicles. And they have vehicles in service or planned that range from electric fire trucks to garbage trucks to even some of these big snow removal trucks. As we know, these are the vehicles that are around our cities, moving every day. And, you know, if you think about a garbage truck, just even the idling that a garbage truck does is a massive amount of carbon emissions. So really meaningful that cities are trying the hard stuff. And the City of Toronto's electric fire truck will be parked on the show floor. So please come see that. And we'll also have a panel on greening waste collection with the City of Peel, Mack Trucks, and Mterra Group that I am quite excited about. I don't know how many of you geek out on sort of EV journalism the way I do. Obviously, I work for a media outlet. But sort of one of our heroes at Electric Autonomy is an American journalist named John Volker. I quite like this quote from him, you know, that what his purpose is to help explain the changes and really the meaningfulness of electric vehicles and how sort of disruptive that technology is. We're still sort of thinking about how we want him to appear at the show, but definitely one of the topics he'll be speaking to that he's really passionate about is on a panel about plug-in hybrids. And I know plug-in hybrids for sort of the inner circle group like us can be a little bit controversial. But the fact of the matter is that fleets are looking at this option, and it is on us as Electric Autonomy to help fleets navigate this option, implement it where it's appropriate, and also not implement it where a BEV could serve a better purpose. But also when a fleet is selecting a plug-in hybrid, how do we make sure, as Tim said to me earlier, they're not just dragging a combustion engine around on sort of the back of the battery. So we really want to make sure that these vehicles are properly utilized. We did an analysis with Geotab earlier at Electric Autonomy, and we discovered that fleets that use plug-in hybrids are the sort of on average using fossil fuels for 86% of the energy needs for that vehicle, which is just terrible. So we're going to have a good sit down and a good conversation about how we optimize the use of plug-in hybrids, and especially since our government does classify them as zero emissions vehicles, so we want them to operate that way. Another piece of the puzzle is helping independent operators go electric. So if you think about ride hailing or food delivery drivers, or even the independent subcontractors that drop packages at your front door, the tricky part of last mile delivery is helping these folks at what I'd call the bottom of the electrification food chain benefit, especially when it comes to fuel costs. So there's a really interesting kind of Russian doll in logistics where you'll have a shipper that goes to a third-party logistics group. That third-party logistics group then may hire drivers, and those drivers are then delivering the package for the shipper. And so it's because that third-party logistics provider doesn't actually own any what we call assets or vehicles, it's a really interesting behavioral change. And there's all kinds of really interesting rental programs and education programs to try and help these drivers go electric. We're trying to do our small part at the EV and Charging Expo. So we're working with Fleet as a Service company 7Gen to offer free passes to some of these independent operators so they can come to the show, they can test drive vehicles, and they can benefit from the educational programming. We're going to have a really cool selection of vehicles available for test drive, from vehicles like the Kia Niro EV that are affordable, to the Ram ProMaster van that is great for delivery, to even the ID Buzz, which I think is just fun. I hope that I'll get a chance to drive it at the show. And, really with a mind to showing this group, okay, how do you think in terms of total cost of ownership? How is this going to benefit you? How do we arrange charging? What does that look like? And really provide sort of something that feels a little bit more seamless for these folks. We also want to myth bust around EV repairability. Tim let me know that you have an upcoming webinar on this topic on EVs after the warranty with David Giles, who actually spoke at the EV and Charging Expo on our workshop stage last year. And this year we have an EV trainer from Napa Next Drive on the workshop stage, who will explain that there is indeed a strong and developing aftermarket for EVs, and he'll walk through some of the repairs they've done, and even to, yes, batteries. So, I think that this is, again, another barrier, is folks are sort of like, well, where am I going to get this vehicle fixed? And, we want to make sure that fleets and organizations understand what that looks like. I'm sure everybody is very passionate about the topic of seamless and secure charging. I know personally, I have like 10 apps on my phone with different wallets to charge my Hyundai Ioniq 5. It's incredibly frustrating. We all look over, or we all used to look over to Tesla and think, wow, that would be great. And I think we're sort of on our way there. So we're going to have companies present on some of the emerging technologies in this area for non-Tesla EVs, and really looking at evolving the experience. So that might be as simple, if not plug and charge, as triggering a charging session from your infotainment system, or triggering a charging center from your vehicle app. So if I could go right into my Hyundai app and start a charging session and have the payment move through and authorize in the background, I would be much happier. So definitely this is an area where the technology is evolving, and there are companies, collaborating and working very hard to orchestrate this in the background. I also know that you recently had Switch on to talk about multifamily charging. This is a passion area for us. If you think about 2/3 of Canadians live in multifamily homes. Actually, let me put that a little bit better. 2/3 of young Canadians live in multifamily homes. And so this is really important. We have to make charging accessible to folks. And as we all know, home charging is the most convenient option. There are other ways of EV ownership. I've heard of people who have a public charger that they use as a home charger. But I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves in terms of cost, especially, having accessibility to EV charging in your own building is kind of a game changer. So we're seeing that it's getting much smarter and it's getting much cheaper to install, which I think are both great innovations. There's lots of challenges with condo buildings, but one of them used to be that when you'd analyze how many stations you could fit into a building, you used to use kind of some very basic math where you would look at the peak of the building and then just kind of install your chargers under that peak, and that's how many you can install. Companies are now looking at much more sophisticated technology where they look at the load of a building in real time and smartly and intelligently manage those chargers in real time. So rather than just kind of restricting yourselves to a theoretical peak that might happen once or twice a year when everybody's air conditioning is on, et cetera, Now those chargers can toggle in real time with the capacity of the building. And I think it's going to be sort of really is going to help us with outfitting older buildings and making sure that accessibility is there for folks who are not in single family homes. So before I go, I'm going to just one last topic before we move over to Michael is the importance of cleaning up ports in the age of tariffs. So, as some of you know, ports are incredibly dense zones of emissions from cargo handling, freight trucks coming in and out, all kinds of activities at a port. And yet we all know that if we're going to diversify trade, ports are going to be increasingly important to our economy. So we have a panel on port electrification, and we have the Port of Cleveland joining us. We also have, so the yes, as we look to really expand our ports and make the most of this infrastructure, I think it's a great opportunity to go, how do we modernize these ports? How do we reduce emissions? And how do we electrify them? Whether that's finding electric drayage trucks or providing great EV charging hubs. There's some work going on in the US around this. And so we have the Electrification Coalition, which is a large nonprofit in the US, coming in to speak on this topic, alongside the Port of Cleveland and Orange EV, which is sort of very well known for their terminal tractors. So very excited about that one. I will hand it over to Michael while my dog is sort of making a fuss. I will say this is one of my the sessions I'm most excited about at the show, which is that we're looking at electrifying freight and how do we tackle some of these bigger Class 8 vehicles. There are quite a few projects in Europe and the US tackling electrifying trucking corridors. And he'll be sharing some of the technology that Schneider Electric is piloting to make real advances in zero emissions trucking.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. What kind of dog do you have?
He is a Chinese village dog. He's rescued from the streets of Shanghai.
I didn't recognize the accent. No. All right, Michael, and thanks very much. Oh, a quick question, in case we do run out of time, and maybe it's an obvious one, but with this electric vehicle charging management system for multi-unit buildings that I guess Switch has developed, obviously that's been cleared through all the channels for code and so on, because
Yeah.
that was a real barrier for. I mean, even at home, it's a very strictly followed thing about how much energy you can draw.
Yeah, my understanding is that the system has, again, I'm not a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, but um, there's a physical addition that goes on the panel,
Mhm.
and then that is orchestrated with software on the chargers. So it's a whole smart system, but we'll have Signature Electric, Phoenix Contact, and Switch, who are the experts explaining these systems.
Someone we can ask, right? I'll let you introduce Michael. Hey, Michael.
Michael, excited to have you.
Thank
And
you.
I will turn it over to you. Again, our exhibitors for the show make a huge contribution to the innovations we can present, and we're just so thankful.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity, Ilana. We're glad to be back this year again at the EV Expo by Electric Autonomy. Quite exciting times, a lot of changings, changes happening in our industry, a lot of up and downs. But what I would say and what's beautiful about this event is to demonstrate how here in Canada, there's something called resiliency. We have this belief that we can make transportation more sustainable, and this is what we're all aiming for, and I do believe we'll be achieving it in due time. So, well, again, glad to be with all of you. So, for those who do not know me, I'm Michael Haburi, and I lead the mobility sector within Schneider Electric for Canada. Some of you might have heard the term Schneider Electric. We are not in the elevator business. That's Schindler, and we're not in the sausage industry. That's also another Schneider. We're just Schneider Electric. That's why there's the electrical term in it. And we're a global energy management and automation leader in over 100 countries. And we've been present in Canada for over a century. And today we have a solid growing workforce of about 2,600 employees with 4 manufacturing facilities and 450 engineers. Uh, so Schneider Electric, what we say is we're an impact company, and this is why we're globally recognized for our sustainable approach, and we've won multiple awards for it. And this is a small sneak peek on the right. Just recently, we've been recognized by Corporate Knight as the most sustainable company in the world. Same thing by Time magazine. So something that we're quite proud of at Schneider Electric. And as we have committed to eliminate all operational carbon emission by 2030 and to move the 100% electric vehicles by 2030, we're also committed to achieve the set of sustainable goals that our customer are aiming for. And this could be definitely achieved through digital and sustainable transformation with our energy and automation management systems. So let's dive into the main topic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking about the global trends that we're seeing, the associated challenges, and the opportunities that our trends represents. And then I'll be jumping into the innovations that we'll be showcasing at the event. So as we focus on raising awareness, sustainability is truly increasingly acknowledged by any person on this planet, especially be it in transit passengers or drivers of trucks or just regular drivers of EVs or people who have ICE vehicles, they want to switch to EVs. So what it's good happening is companies like us, we're getting compelled. We have scientists, chemists, and engineers within the industry that we're working really hard to innovate in new technologies. Uh, and a good example is the one that I'll be talking about is in the field of high density solid state batteries. Sorry, that's not what we do, but there's I'm mixing up. There's solid state batteries that are coming up. Honda, they're planning to have a plant to manufacture their electrical vehicles in Alston, in plant number 4 and plant number 5. This is where they're going to be producing these batteries literally here in Canada. So that's quite exciting, and it's going to definitely increase the range of the vehicles and survive in our harsh weather up here in Canada. Second, there's this trend that is also inspiring technology leaders to innovate on the infrastructure of the future, aiming to minimize the time users and operators spend recharging their EVs, thereby enhancing efficiency and reducing costs. A prime illustration of this is the introduction of DC infrastructures, because, of course, if we want to go with fast charging, DC is truly required here. And this can be combined with renewables generation of renewables on site. The concept of microgrid, it's becoming more and more a reality. We see it mainly on public transit. The TCC is already doing that, but slowly, even EV infrastructure in specific corridors, they're starting to implement it on a global scale. Third, well, there's the escalating and unmanaged demand for electricity across the nation, and it's placing a lot of pressure on local energy infrastructure. So as a result, there's solution such as the vehicle to grid, or like we just heard earlier, an EV EMS energy management system that we see in multi-residential locations to properly manage the energy. Lastly, there's a varying pace of regulation, funding, and incentives among different jurisdictions, and it's impacting the transition to zero-emission vehicles. And a good one is the eco-camionnage, or the eco truck funding that is slowing down, let's say, that has been put on hold for a while, and we're all looking for it to come back. And there's also ambitious deadline to achieve these goals, coupled with constraints on available power to support these initiatives, which has led to adoption of new services that I'll be talking about later on, which is energy as a service. Now, Other trends, we're seeing the energy transition that is significantly reshaping the energy landscape, leading the emergence of prosumers, which is, in our own lingo, means a consumer who also produces his own energy. And it could be applied even within a building or a charging hub or even at home. And this shift represents a gradual move from a centralized to a distributed energy landscape. And this is something that we're going to be hearing more and more. And in this context, uh, if we see any occurrence of power outages, it could literally underscores the critical need for resilient infrastructure. And of course, it could be tackled through a combination of on-site energy and storage and renewables generation. Finally, there's a swift shift from the demand from a simplistic product-based infrastructure to a demand for energy services and digital infrastructure, and through the integration of AI's technologies to visualize and operate the infrastructure from possibly a centralized control room or literally from an iPad or an iPhone. And of course, when we talk about fast charging hubs, the feedback is quite clear. First, time is money, right? Most of them, they're privately owned. They're going to be investing massive amounts for their infrastructure and truck. So, and they want to make sure that their trucks are running more than one shift so that they can maximize their ROI. And for that, again, the infrastructure will have to be resilient, has to be efficient, always available, and sustainable. Now, to overcome these challenges, let's dive into Schneider's Electric latest innovation in energy management, dedicated for in-depots or in-transit charging. But before so, there's, you know, I'm I'm a mechanical engineer, and us engineers, we love equations. And there's this equation that we love at Schneider. We say that by electrifying and the combination of digitization, this is how we're going to be able to decarbonize. And this is exactly what I'll be showing. I'll give you an example on how we can help electrify, how we can help digitize the the future of the infrastructure for hub recharging to bring the megawatt charging. So this way we're going to be able to decarbonize our transportation. If you look at this image, we can see that there's multiple applications uh, to support charging. It could be in a destination, at work, at home. I haven't added it, but it's common knowledge. But what we're going to be talking about, which could be extremely beneficial, is for fleet and for transit charging. And for that, on the digital side, we have something that we called DELMS. It's a dynamic energy and load management system. And that's quite exciting because we're able to manage the energy based on the demand and not just based on what's available. While at the same time, Schneider has another solution called EV Connect that can tackle all of these, even when it comes to solution for multi-residential buildings. And we have some great showcases and success stories that we can talk about at a different time, but this is not the focus. So let's dive into DELMS. So where does DELMS truly work? And I like what Ilana brought earlier. She brought the topic of ports electrifying their fleets and their equipments. And it's truly, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this demand not only in a depot or for transit, but we're seeing it in applications at ports, next to transportation hubs where there's also rail, etc., etc. So that's quite exciting, and this could be applied, of course, to all these multiple applications. And what is truly DEMS? Well, that might be quite an exhaustive slide, but you'll have to follow me, and it's quite critical to understand where we're all heading to be able to achieve our end goal. First, we recognize that we need specific products to achieve that. We need a charger, great, but we need all kind of electrical equipment to protect it. So if at home you have a TV, you want to make sure that you protect it properly. You might see that you have a small breaker and an electrical panel downstairs hidden. Well, these equipment are quite essential, and they're going to be able to manage how much power we're getting and how much energy we're distributing to the multiple equipments that we have. So this is the common. This is the easy, this is what we called devices or DERs in certain instances if we want to add solar panels or an on-site battery. Then, did I do the right thing? Yeah. Sorry about that. Then there's the second layer where operators, they need to properly manage their assets and they need to understand what is truly happening with their equipment. And this is what we call the edge control. The magic word is control, where you can truly visualize what's happening with your multiple system and you can control it, be it your energy on one sense that you're getting from the utility line, or if you're producing your own energy on site, uh, through renewables, you're going to be able to do that with something that we call the microgrid operations. And then on the right, what you need is another system, which is DELMS, which is how you're going to properly manage the loads in a smart way based on what the charging management system that usually charging manufacturers provide with. And they're going to say, well, based on the weather, the telematics, and the route that my truck needs to be, it will be facing, well, this is the amount of energy that it needs before it hits the road at that specific time. That information will be passed on to DELMS, and DELMS, it's going to be able to manage all of that and then feed the right energy at the right time to achieve it based on the X amount of trucks that they have. And what's exciting is we're able to bring it to another level. And this is where AI kicks in. And this is where digital services kicks in. And for all of these systems, we're able to have a fingerprint created for each of these units. So that way we understand how they operate, how much the demand is required. And then we can make predictions to make sure that we can extend the life of all these equipments. So of course, less cost for the operators. So on the long run, they don't have to go and verify that the equipment is working properly every 2 months or 3 months. They can wait maybe a year because the system is saying, hey, things are running fine. Keep on rolling these equipments and things are good. And then we have something else called Aviva. Schneider bought the company for literally 11 billion euro called Aviva. And what they do is they are a system of systems. They can, in an agnostic way, integrate any of these equipments and show you in one screen what's happening with all of your assets, the chargers, the electrical infrastructure, other information. Let's talk about ESG reporting. You want to see what's happening, what is your true impact? You're going to be able to see that through these multiple systems coming through in one literally uh, image or window, let's say. And this is what Aviva can do. And on top of all of that, well, everything is cyber secured, integrated in it. It could be done on-prem or on cloud, and everything is OCPP. Now, everything that I'm showing you is agnostic. I'm not here to push the Schneider solution only. Everything that you see on the digital solution could be connected to any type of charger, any type of infrastructure to help the operators properly manage their infrastructure. And when you see you have this combination, this is where, of course, there's going to be other applications that they need, a depot management system, or they want to see the scheduling. There may be the scheduling that, well, all of that can be connected to Aviva to facilitate the life of an operator. Because some people, they do not need to see uh, what is happening with G2 Coupon. They just need the big reports, the CFOs and all these controls. They want to see, okay, well, what is truly happening with our system? Where is our investment going? What is our ESG impact? They're going to be able to track it. And then these other sub platforms, this is for the operators. Each one of them, usually they have their own sets. So it might look complex, but this is truly the best way to properly operate their fleet at the end of the time. And we always, we always think that it's all about the bus or the truck or the vehicle and the charger, but truly there's so much behind it. And this is where these operators need to look at. So this is where Schneider has been investing a lot of R&D. Literally 5% of our R&D is going through developing these type of solution dedicated for specific markets, and transportation is, of course, and the EV infrastructure is the biggest one. Let's carry on. How does that look in a system? So at the beginning, you have your equipment, your assets, your bus, your truck, your charging infrastructure. This will be in communication with the DELMS and the dynamic load management and the power that we're receiving. Now, okay, sorry about that. Okay, now it worked. Like I said, you can integrate any energy management on-site, generation of energy, be it solar, or you can only have batteries to collect energy and you can use it at the right time to reduce your costs. And then that system will be talking to the smart charging management system, will be talking to the chargers, and will be talking to the route planning, the telematics, the depot, etc. So this is in a different way, what I showed you in the previous slide, how the whole system works between each other. And Schneider doesn't have a smart charging management system for the specific application. We have EV Connect, like I said, for destination, commercial, building, industrial. But because this is, a specific type of charging management system, which is quite complex, we're partnering with the Mobility House in Seaway. And between brackets, I'm going to say something out loud. If someone says that they can do everything, don't believe them. We are an ecosystem, and all the people that will be at the EV Expo, the beauty of it is we're a small community and we're all working together. And the magnificent word of partnership, this is what's making things happening. You have people dedicated for design, others for building, others for specific digital solution or specific products, and we all come together to make this project happen. So that's something that I'm quite happy about. I was literally yesterday at the Propulsion Quebec, and this is what I came. That was the output for me, and I felt it last year at the EV Expo by Electric Autonomy, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see it again. Let's carry on. I think timing wise, we're getting there. Second, interesting innovation is on, I'm going to call it the product side, and it's something called a solid state transformer. So for people who know what is a transformer, usually it's an equipment that the utility line provides at X amount of kilovolts and will step it down to about 1,000 volts, 400 volts, or 480, I would say, depending on the application, so that we can feed the charger. Now, what you see right now is the transformer stepping the utility line, coming down, giving it to a switchgear to protect the equipment. Then you have that transformer stepping down the voltage, and then it's going to the chargers that are transforming, or I would say converting AC to DC, and then we're able to charge. So we're talking about a lot of equipments, a lot of changes, conversions, stepping down, quite complex. And we said, well, Schneider, how can we make this more efficient? Well, to make it more efficient is to combine some of these solution and make it in a more seamless way, an easier way, and smaller way to simplify the life of the operators, reduce the costs, etc. And what we came about is something called a solid state transformer. And a solid state transformer is a combination of a transformer, bringing it, let's say, from 25,000 volts up to 1,000 volts, while at the same time converting it from AC to DC. And when that is done, well, it goes directly to the dispensers. And you have, of course, converters, the conversion is being done in that same enclosure. This way, it's pretty easy and it goes to the dispensers. So again, making it more easy for the operators to have these type of equipments. So this is quite exciting. And what's exciting about it is that it has a lot of benefits, of course. The first, in terms of the energy management, as I said earlier, the solution provide a more efficient system compared to NAC architecture. Because in average, and you can see the numbers, we're getting a 3% increase of efficiency. And 3% efficiency might sound quite low, but this proves, this can make a lot of difference for the fleet operators in terms of um, available energy and the quality of the energy. You know, I was talking to some engineering firms, and they get mandated to find ways to find that 1% or 2% efficiency improvement in their system. So 3% just like that by, through tests that we done, it's quite impressive. I'm pretty sure that we can get more out of it. And what I'm showing you right now, this is what we're literally providing for two proof of concepts that we're doing, one in the US and one in Europe, with medium and heavy duty EV operators. And we're packaging that solution and we're doing right now. So we're under NDA. So firstly, I can't provide much detail, but what I'm showing you is exactly that solution. And it's quite exciting because what you see on the left is the typical approach that we're saying globally. What is on the right, this is the future where we're suddenly tapping into the DC solution. And for those who understand, maybe looking, who understand a bit these images, you will see In blue, we have, or in green, I would say, we see a battery and we see a solar panel. Well, these solutions are usually working on DC, and we can go and connect them directly on that electrical bus bar that is suddenly DC. So the integration of these solutions becomes even more easy, less complex, and less costly. What we see, and I said, is first of all, efficiency is pretty great, but what it also does, and again, I'm going to go technical here, these transformers, they're going to reduce drastically the harmonics. Harmonics is what we call noise. That's what disrupt the there's a lot of solutions to fix that. There's filters that usually are required to bring it to the right level based on what the municipality or the regulation of the area are requesting. Well, for that, it's already pre-integrated. And that opens the door for something called vehicle to grid, because if one day we're going to be able to resell that energy to the grid, let's say we have all these trucks waiting and something happened, there's an outage. Well, we want to flip it back and give it to the grid. Well, usually a Hydro-Quebec or an OPG will require X amount of harmonics uh, received from the operators of energy, independent operator of energy, and that's going to help out. So that's pretty cool. Finally, what it entails is less equipment to install. So we're going to talk about less material, such as copper and cabling. So suddenly we're becoming more and more sustainable. We're reducing all these extra material. And since it's a small container, maybe you see it in the image, it's a really small container, which means it's a reduced footprint, which means less capex. Now, third innovate. I'm not going to call it an innovation, but it's a service that has been developed to facilitate the life of any fleet operators, and it's energy as a service. So what is energy as a service? Well, we need to understand first, if typically right now, any charging infrastructure is getting their electricity from the utility, which is great, good. But if anything happens, where we're quite dependent on the utility, right? Second, there's another approach that we call the CapEx approach. Well, someone is going to go and build their own project and they're going to finance it on their own and they're going to do everything from A to Z, but they depend on a lot of players that they're not sure if they're recommending them the right solution or not, or the right optimized, or are they truly looking to the future. It's not to diminish anyone, but there's so much uncertainty right now, and all these infrastructure will they stay the same as is? Well, the reality is no, it's going pretty fast, and we're seeing it. The chargers are increasing, the mileage of the vehicles are increasing drastically. So everything is going drastic. So putting a lot of capex could be risky for some these owners at a certain degree, and they say, well, we're not willing to go that fast, and we're not willing to put a lot of money. And if after 10, 5 years, everything changes completely, we're stuck with whatever we acquired for another 15 years. Well, this is where energy as a service kicks in. It's a third party that's going to be doing the design and the build, the operate, the maintenance, and the finance for everything, literally everything. What's required though to get into this, and when I say everything, it's including the trucks, it's including the chargers, it's including the building, whatever that the client is looking for, it's going to be all part of it. But there has to be, I'm going to call it a hook, is to produce renewable energy, and that's how. That site will be fully decarbonized or offering decarbonized clean energy. And we've seen it right now. We've seen some projects going that specific path. A good example, as I said it earlier, is the TTC. They have these they took the route of energy as service, and they were able to ramp up quickly and have a good piece of their fleet transferred to EVs. So that's quite exciting here. And as I said, well, that's another sense of what an energy as a service life cycle, because like I said, it's not a typical CapEx design, build, operate, and maintain. Here we're talking that we're adding two more options here is the finance. It's the financing piece that comes into it. And that is done through a joint venture between Schneider Electric, by the way, and the Carlyle Group. It's a small company; they're just worth a few billions. And we created Alpha Structure, and this is what Alpha Structure does. And I'll finalize and end I think I'm almost at the time. Let me see if I'm able to switch. I'll show it quickly. The biggest bus depot in North America is in Maryland, and it's Structure that did it. And quickly, we have solar panels in it. We have batteries. We're putting on-site uh, green hydrogen electrolyzers for their hydrogen fleets. So quite exciting. It is a true showcase. It does exist, and that could be something definitely, Tim. I'll be more than happy. Maybe one day we can go visit it together.
It sounds like fun. Sounds like fun. Well,
That's
gosh,
a
Michael,
plan.
thank you so much. You've packed an awful lot into that presentation. It'll probably be worth looking through it a couple times on the recording just to digest it for us
I went really fast. Yes,
us non-technical types. So, but I do appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit about Schneider Electric. I'll see you for sure at the show. I'll be there, and I'll look you up. And Ilana,
looking
thank you
forward.
so much as well. Jason, we've got a couple of minutes, and I think there are a couple of questions. I'll just say, Michael, that listening to you talk about the Aviva a dashboard, I guess we could call it a dashboard, it reminds me a lot. Well, I was in the beverage industry, and we had an ERP system, SAP, where it just combines every aspect of the organization, brings it all into one management piece, and it's a common thing in a lot of industries. But you've brought it to charging and energy management, which is really cool.
It is, and funny thing is, it's coming from heavy industry applications, and because they fully understand how to manage it with all these multiple subsystems, in the mining industry, let's say, quite complex, they were able to scale it down and facilitate it for any uh, operator of fleets.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, exciting times, pretty
Yeah.
exciting times.
Jason, do we have something there?
Thanks, Tim. Questions are pretty quiet this month, but we have a question from Les asking about with this Tesla semi truck ramping up production later this year, and I guess other fully electric heavy trucks. Do you see that having a significant impact on the commercial truck market in Canada? And this could be either for Ilana or Michael,
I
whoever has an
I
opinion.
can start. To be honest, uh, we are seeing projects in the US where the semi trucks are involved. And Ilana, you might be aware about it. There's this Illinois corridor happening, and multiple operators are part of it, and Tesla is part of it. And there's Prologis and Flying J. A lot of them are stepping in and they're testing together. When it doesn't mean that it's going to make a negative effect. The only difference is that they have versus the others is that they again created their own standard for the plugins versus the others. So that might be another uh, complication that we'll have to mitigate a bit like what we're seeing right now. But we're quite excited for it. And I think we need to put politics aside and recognize that Tesla was in a certain way that innovator or that element, that spark that pushed the transformation to go into EVs maybe 15 years ago. And we need to believe that, again, politics aside, we're hoping that they're going to be part of that revolution for the heavy duty trucks. So I'll let maybe Alana.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the deliverability of those trucks, meaning I don't know when they're coming to our market. I haven't heard sort of anything in the background of fleets acquiring these trucks, but it could happen. They're definitely operating for PepsiCo in the US. So I guess there's the potential that PepsiCo might consider acquiring them here. There's also big companies like Amazon that might look at them. But again, I don't know how they're making their way through sort of our whole back end systems in terms of, going into and the other pieces we all know is that a lot of our rebate and incentive programs are not Tesla friendly right now because of the political environment. And that may also affect the Tesla Semi. So, there's a fantastic federal program for medium and heavy duty vehicles that helps to de-risk those vehicles. But if you can't apply a significant rebate to that kind of a Class 8 big rig, that makes it financially difficult to choose that equipment. So I think that might be an impediment to us seeing those Tesla semis here, especially while that program is still really underway until 2026 for those vehicle rebates. And I don't know what's happening with Éco-Camionnage. I don't know what choice they will make on whether or not Tesla is eligible for rebates, but I think that might be one of the critical factors when fleets are deciding on whether or not to choose that equipment here.
All right,
Okay,
I think
thank
we
you.
probably need to leave it there. We're at the end of the hour, and Jason, you got a light duty night tonight. You didn't have too much time to go through questions. For my humble part, my happy day will be when the garbage truck comes down the street and it's silent. That's going to be a day for a party, in my opinion. But thank you again, both of you, for coming and doing this with us. We'll look forward to seeing you at the show, and hopefully some of the folks watching will find their way there as well. It's a fabulous show, been there the last few years, I guess since it started actually, and it's very worthwhile. Anybody interested in the electrification space is going to love it. So I thank you for that. And I'd like to say just a few words about next month on the webinar. It's going to be a very, very interesting webinar. We are going to be welcoming a fellow by the name of Dr. Toby Bond. Toby's a senior scientist at an organization called Canadian Light Source. I believe they're in Saskatoon. And it's Canada's national, get this, synchrotron facility. Now, you're going to have to look up synchrotron because I did, and I'm still not sure I totally understand it, but he's a fascinating guy. Toby completed got his science degree and his PhD in Jeff Don's lab, Dr. Jeff Don's lab at Dalhousie University. And he's going to help us understand why it is we can expect that today's EV traction batteries will outlast the vehicles that they power. So I think we'll get into single crystal and some of that, a little bit of technical stuff, but also just some general knowledge. He's risen to the challenge. He wants to do something that's consumable by a broad population, just not other highly technical folks. So please note the date. That will be on Tuesday, May 6th, always 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you've enjoyed this episode, yeah, we ask you just take a moment to give it a like and let us know your thoughts in the comments below the recording. It's free, just takes a second or two, and it really does help others find our channel on YouTube. That wraps up another edition of Canada Talks Electric Cars. We truly appreciate your questions and your engagement today. From all of us at Electric Vehicle Society, stay charged, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.